The sound of breaking glass shattered the quiet elegance of Riverside Memorial Hospital at 2:47 a.m. Security footage would later show three figures in medical scrubs moving with calculated precision through the maternity ward. By the time anyone noticed, it was already too late. "Mrs. Chen, I need you to stay calm." The doctor's hands trembled as he delivered words no parent should ever hear. "You're twins. They're not in the nursery." Victoria Chen, 28, felt the world tilt violently. She had given birth just 4 hours earlier to identical twin girls after 3 years of fertility treatments and a pregnancy that had cost everything: her health, her savings, her marriage to tech entrepreneur David Chen. "What do you mean they're not there?" Her voice came out strangled, desperate. "We believe they were taken. The police are already—" Victoria's scream echoed through corridors that had witnessed countless births, but never a tragedy like this. Across Atlanta, in the Mechanicsville neighborhood where broken streetlights created pools of darkness between buildings, 11-year-old Jasmine Tucker was doing what she did every night: surviving. She crouched behind a dumpster near the closed community center, organizing her treasures: 2 cans of soup she'd found, a jacket someone had left on a bench, and a paperback book with half its pages missing. Jasmine had been on the streets for 8 months, ever since her grandmother died, and child services came looking for her. She had learned quickly that the system wasn't salvation, it was just another kind of cage. Better to be free and hungry than trapped and afraid. The November rain had an edge to it, the kind that warned of winter coming fast and merciless. Jasmine pulled her thin hoodie tighter, her natural hair pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't been properly combed in weeks. She was sorting through her belongings when she heard it, a sound so out of place in this forgotten corner of the city that it made her freeze. Crying. Not the wail of sirens or the shouts of arguments, but the desperate newborn cry of babies. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew that sound. Last year she had found a baby abandoned in a shopping cart outside a laundromat. By the time she convinced someone to call for help, the baby was already cold. The image still haunted her dreams. This time would be different. Jasmine crept toward the sound, every instinct screaming danger. Behind an unmarked white SUV with tinted windows, she found them: 2 infant girls wrapped in hospital blankets, lying in a plastic storage bin like discarded toys. Their tiny faces were red from crying, their hospital bracelets still attached: Baby Girl Chen I and Baby Girl Chen B. "Oh God," Jasmine breathed, her hands shaking as she reached for them. They were so small, so fragile, their skin already cool from exposure to the November night. She heard voices then, harsh and urgent, coming from around the corner. Male voices, angry voices. "Told you to handle this quietly. The mother's already gone to the police. The boss said to make them disappear. We can still—" Jasmine didn't wait to hear more. She scooped up both babies, one in each arm, and ran. Her feet knew these streets like they knew her own heartbeat. She darted through an alley, vaulted over a chain-link fence, squeezed through a gap in a boarded-up building that only someone her size could fit through. Behind her, shouts, running footsteps, the slam of car doors. She ran until her lungs burned, until the baby's cries became her entire world, until she reached the one place she knew they'd be safe, at least for tonight. The old Peachtree Baptist Church had been abandoned for 2 years, waiting for developers who never came. Jasmine had discovered a way into the basement through a broken window. It was dry, relatively warm, and most importantly, no one else knew about it. She settled into her usual corner, cradling the twins against her chest. They were both crying now, a desperate hunger cry that pierced her heart. She had nothing to give them. No food, no milk, nothing but her body heat and her fierce determination that they would not die. Not on her watch. "Shh, shh," she murmured, rocking them gently. "I got you. You're safe now, I promise." In the dim light filtering through the grimy windows, she studied their faces. They were Asian babies with that beautiful caramel skin and dark hair already thick on their heads. One had a tiny dimple in her left cheek. The other had slightly smaller ears. "You need names," Jasmine whispered. I can't just call you A and B. The one with the dimple would be Grace, because Jasmine's grandmother used to say Grace was getting what you didn't deserve. The other would be Hope, because if these babies could survive what they'd been through, there was hope for anything. What Jasmine didn't know was that at that exact moment, Atlanta was exploding into chaos. Victoria Chen, heiress to the Chen technology fortune and CEO of Innovate Tech Solutions, had just offered $5 million for information leading to her daughter's return. News helicopters circled the hospital. Every major network interrupted programming. The FBI activated a child abduction emergency. And in an abandoned church basement, an 11-year-old homeless girl was promising 2 newborn babies that she would die before she let anyone hurt them. If you're gripped by this story, stay with me, because what happens next will shatter everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the impossible choices we make to protect the innocent. The first 48 hours nearly broke Jasmine's spirit, and that was remarkable for someone who had already survived things most adults couldn't imagine. Grace and Hope cried in relentless cycles. When one finally exhausted herself into sleep, the other would wake screaming with hunger. Jasmine had no formula, no bottles, no diapers. She used pages torn from her paperback book as makeshift diapers, changed them constantly with rainwater she collected in old bottles, and sang every song she could remember to keep them calm. But singing didn't feed babies. On the morning of the 3rd day, Grace's cry changed. It became weaker, more desperate. Jasmine knew that sound too. It was the sound of a body giving up. "No, no, no," she whispered fiercely, holding both babies against her chest. "You don't get to give up. I didn't save you just to watch you fade away." She knew what she had to do, even though it terrified her. Mr. Park ran a small convenience store on the edge of the neighborhood. He had always been kind to Jasmine, sometimes letting her sweep the floor for a snack, never calling the police when she lingered too long by the warm air vents. If anyone would help her without asking impossible questions, it would be him. She waited until after dark, wrapped Grace and Hope in her jacket, and made her way through the shadows. Every police car that passed made her heart stop. The posters were everywhere now, plastered on every surface. Missing, Chen twins, reward $5 million. $5 million. Jasmine's mind couldn't even process that number. It was more money than she had ever imagined existed in the world. But every time she thought about calling the police, she remembered those men's voices in the alley. The boss said to make them disappear. Whoever had taken these babies hadn't been random kidnappers. This was planned, professional, and whoever was behind it had resources. Mr. Park's eyes went wide when Jasmine slipped through his back door with 2 infants in her arms. "Jasmine, what have you—" He stopped, recognition dawning on his face. "Those babies from the news. I found them," Jasmine said quickly. "They were going to die, Mr. Park. I heard men talking about making them disappear. I couldn't leave them." Mr. Park was 67 years old. He had fled North Korea as a young man, had seen enough evil to recognize it when it appeared. He studied Jasmine's face, the desperation there, the fierce protectiveness. "How long since they ate?" 3 days. I tried to give them water, but they need milk. Please, I'll pay you back. I'll work for free. I'll do anything." Mr. Park was already moving, pulling formula, bottles, diapers, and baby wipes from his shelves. "You cannot stay where you've been staying. It's too cold for babies. I don't have anywhere else. My storage room upstairs, I use it maybe twice a year. There's a heater, a bathroom, a lock on the door." He pressed a key into her hand. "No rent, no questions. But child," he gripped her shoulder firmly, "if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Your instincts saved these babies once. Let it guide you again." Meanwhile, across the city in her Buckhead penthouse, Victoria Chen was destroying her life trying to find her daughters. She hadn't slept since the abduction. Her company's board had gently suggested she take leave. Her ex-husband David had returned from San Francisco, but their reunion was strained, marked by blame and grief neither could articulate. "We have a lead. FBI agent Martinez announced during the morning briefing. Hospital security footage was corrupted, but we recovered fragments from a backup server. Victoria leaned forward, her hands trembling. Show me. The grainy footage showed 3 figures in scrubs, but in one frame, the camera caught something, a distinctive tattoo on one person's wrist, a corporate logo. That's Chen Technologies, Victoria whispered, her face going pale. That's my father's company logo. Mrs. Chen, Agent Martinez said carefully, we need to consider the possibility that this abduction was orchestrated by someone with intimate knowledge of your family and your business. You think someone I know tried to murder my daughters? The agent's silence was answer enough. That night, as Jasmine carefully fed Grace and Hope formula in the storage room above Mr. Park's store, learning through terrifying trial and error how to hold bottles at the right angle, how to burp them, how to tell the difference between a hunger cry and a pain cry, she didn't know she was being hunted. A figure sat in a car across the street, speaking into an encrypted phone. We found them. The homeless girl has them in the Korean guy's shop. The voice that answered was cold, calculated, and belonged to someone Victoria Chen had trusted her entire life. Wait. The longer we wait, the easier it is to frame this as a tragedy. Homeless child steals babies, can't care for them. They die from neglect. She panics, runs. Another body in the Chattahoochee River. No one asks questions about dead street kids. 3 weeks passed. Jasmine transformed from a child into a mother overnight, driven by love she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. Grace preferred to sleep on her stomach. Hope hated loud noises, but loved when Jasmine sang old gospel songs she remembered from her grandmother. But paranoia grew like poison ivy, choking her peace. The same black sedan cruised past the store every morning. Strangers asked Mr. Park questions about unusual activity. She felt eyes tracking her every move when she ventured out for air. It was on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon that everything exploded. Jasmine was returning from disposing of diapers in the back alley when she noticed the storage room door was open. She had locked it. She knew she had locked it. She set down her bag silently and peered through the crack. 2 men in dark suits were photographing the room with professional efficiency. One was holding Hope carelessly, examining her hospital bracelet. The client wants this finished today, one said into his phone. Make it look like the girl couldn't handle it. Baby's malnourished, situation deteriorated, tragic accident. And the witness, 11-year-old homeless, no family, no one will. Look for her. The rage that consumed Jasmine was ancient and absolute. It wasn't the desperate anger of street survival. It was something primordial, the fury of a mother whose children were threatened. She grabbed a metal pipe from the hallway and attacked. The first man didn't see her coming. The pipe connected with his knee with a sickening crack. He screamed, dropping Hope. Jasmine caught her baby before she hit the floor, tucked her against her chest, and spun to face the second man. You little... He lunged, but Jasmine was smaller, faster, desperate. She ducked under his grab, kicked his shin with all her strength, and bolted for the room where Grace was sleeping. Block the exits, the man shouted into his radio. The girl's running. But Jasmine knew what men in expensive suits would never learn, how to disappear into a city that had forgotten you existed. She went out the window onto the fire escape, secured both babies in her makeshift carrier, and descended 4 stories in seconds. By the time she hit the alley, she could hear more footsteps, more voices, an entire operation converging on her location. She ran through streets she knew like her own breath, through alleys and under fences, through drainage tunnels and abandoned buildings. The babies cried, sensing her terror, but she couldn't stop to comfort them. Survival first, love later. She ended up at the Georgia State University Library, large, labyrinthine, full of students who wouldn't notice one more person, one more face in the crowd. She slipped into the children's section in the back corner, settled behind the tall shelves, and finally let herself breathe. That's when she saw the television. Victoria Chen was on every screen, flanked by FBI agents and a man Jasmine vaguely recognized from business news. We have conclusive evidence, Agent Martinez announced, that the disappearance of the Chen twins was orchestrated by someone within the victim's inner circle. The camera cut to footage of a distinguished older man being led away in handcuffs. Jasmine's breath caught. It was Thomas Chen, Victoria's father, the founder of Chen Technologies. Mr. Chen, the FBI agent continued, arranged the abduction as part of a complex corporate conspiracy. With his daughter's heirs eliminated, and Victoria herself presumably destroyed by grief, he planned to force her out of Innovate Tech Solutions and merge it with his company, claiming he was saving his daughter from her own incompetence. Victoria spoke now, her voice raw with betrayal. My own father hired mercenaries to murder my children because he couldn't accept that I succeeded without him. He wanted them dead that first night. If someone hadn't found them, if someone hadn't been brave enough to keep them safe. Her voice broke. If anyone knows anything, she continued, looking directly into the camera as if she could see through the lens into Jasmine's soul. If anyone has seen my babies, please. There will be no trouble. No questions about why you waited. I just want my daughters home, and I want to thank the person who saved them when my own family tried to kill them. Mrs. Chen has increased the reward, Agent Martinez added, to $10 million. But she wants everyone to know, this isn't about money, it's about bringing her children home and recognizing that whoever kept them alive is a hero. Jasmine looked down at Grace and Hope, sleeping peacefully against her chest. Her girls, her babies. Except they weren't, were they? They never had been. She was just the person who loved them when the world wanted them dead. A librarian approached her section. Honey, are you okay? Those babies? Jasmine made the hardest decision of her life. I need a phone, she said quietly. I need to call someone. 25 minutes later, the library was surrounded, not by men in dark suits with murder in their eyes, but by real police officers, FBI agents, and Victoria Chen, who ran through those doors like her life depended on reaching her children. When she saw Jasmine sitting calmly in the children's section with two healthy, alert babies in her arms, Victoria Chen fell to her knees and sobbed with a grief so profound it seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. The silence that fell over the library was sacred. Victoria Chen knelt on the industrial carpet, tears streaming unchecked down her face as she stared at her daughters, alive, healthy, perfect, in the thin arms of an 11-year-old black girl who should have been in school. Safe, protected, not saving lives on streets that had forgotten her. You kept them alive, Victoria whispered, her voice shattered. How? Why? Jasmine met her eyes with a gaze that had seen too much, survived too much. Because nobody did it for me when I needed it. Those words cut Victoria deeper than any betrayal by her father ever could. She rose slowly, extending trembling hands. May I hold them? Jasmine hesitated only a heartbeat before carefully transferring Grace. Victoria cradled her daughter like she was holding the entire universe, memorizing every detail, her weight, the smell of cheap baby soap and formula, the way her tiny fingers instinctively grasped her mother's silk blouse. This is Grace, Jasmine said softly. She has a dimple in her left cheek. She likes to sleep on her stomach, and she stops crying when you pat her back in a rhythm like a heartbeat. This is Hope, she passed over the second baby. She's more sensitive to noise, but she loves singing. Old songs work best. Gospel, mostly. Victoria stared at Jasmine in wonder. You named them. They needed names. I couldn't keep calling them A and B. Agent Martinez approached carefully. Jasmine, we need to ask you some questions about... No. Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. No interrogations. This child saved my daughters when my own father wanted them dead. She deserves respect, not an interrogation room. She knelt again to meet Jasmine's eyes. Where have you been living? Different places. An abandoned church at first. Then Mr. Park gave me a key to his storage room. Mr. Park? He owns the convenience store on Piedmont. He helped me get formula and diapers. He said I didn't owe him anything, but I do. I owe him everything. Victoria felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. This child had more integrity than her own father, a man she had spent 28 years loving and trusting. "You're going to live with me now," she said simply. Jasmine recoiled. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity, it's justice." Victoria gently touched Jasmine's shoulder. "You took care of my children when I couldn't. You became their big sister during the 3 most dangerous weeks of their lives. That makes you family. I'm a homeless black girl. You're a rich Asian CEO. People will talk. Let them talk." Victoria's grip tightened. "Jasmine, when you found my daughters, you had choices. You could have walked away. You could have called immediately for the reward. But you did something else entirely. You loved them. You risked your life repeatedly. You put these babies above your own survival. That's not something money can buy or blood can claim." Tears finally fell down Jasmine's face, years of pain and loneliness pouring out in sobs that shook her small frame. Victoria pulled her close, and for the first time in 8 months, Jasmine allowed herself to be a child again. "I can give you a family," Victoria whispered into her hair. "I can give you a home. And these 2 girls will grow up knowing they owe their lives to the bravest person I've ever met." 8 months later, the Chen penthouse had been completely transformed. Victoria's minimalist aesthetic now included colorful toys scattered across marble floors and children's laughter echoing through spaces that had been silent too long. Jasmine was enrolled in Westminster School, where her grades placed her in accelerated programs. Mr. Park visited every Sunday, and Victoria had paid off his store and established the Park Tucker Scholarship Fund for homeless youth pursuing education. Thomas Chen was serving 30 years in federal prison. Chen Technologies had been dissolved, its assets redistributed. "Jasmine," Victoria said one evening after the twins had finally fallen asleep, "you saved me as much as you saved them. You taught me that heroism has no color, no age, no bank account. It has only a heart, and yours is the biggest I've ever known." Jasmine smiled shyly, still adjusting to this life of plenty. "Do you think they'll remember me when they grow up?" "I'll tell them their story every single day, about the brave girl who fought the entire world to keep them safe, and when they're old enough to understand, they'll know that their big sister is the most incredible person they'll ever meet." Victoria had learned the greatest lesson of her life not in business school or boardrooms, but from an 11-year-old girl who chose love when the world offered indifference, who chose courage when safety would have been easier, who proved that family isn't about DNA or wealth or race. It's about who shows up when everyone else disappears. It's about who fights when everyone else runs. It's about who loves when love seems impossible. If this story moved you, remember that heroes walk among us every day. They're not always who we expect. Sometimes they're children who should be protected but instead become protectors. Sometimes they're the invisible ones our society overlooks, and sometimes they're exactly the people we need most, when we need them most.